A lot of times we throw out the word passive income, entrepreneurship, and we just toss those out there. Today's guest has actually figured out a way to combine both of those in a really creative way. Daniel, who's our guest today, is honestly a legend in my eyes. Daniel's the owner of Doran Holdings, and he buys businesses now.
In 2011, I was just a worker, and then I was kind of doing the network marketing thing on the side, figuring out if I could do it. Which that opened my mind to the idea of being in business for yourself. Don't launch a business and start a business unless you realize that.
Yeah.
Like there's all these people saying it's a great thing to do. I would say if you have a really good job, don't do it. Keep that salary and just keep your easy life unless you have a...
He started in the construction industry on the line, just working away, and he's built himself up from scratch to the point where he now buys businesses. He has 4 businesses to his name, and he's not stopping anytime soon. The conversation today was nothing less of inspiring, motivating, and honestly, it helped me think more creative in my journey and my entrepreneurial walk. I know that you guys are going to enjoy this podcast, but really quick, if you guys enjoy the way the podcasts have been looking, the cuts, the edits, you're definitely going to want to check out NVN Creates. They're my editing team. I trust them implicitly with everything I send them. They're awesome, and I would definitely recommend you reaching out to them because they are pretty great. All right, let's jump into today's episode of The Dillon England Show with Daniel Doran. Once we're like the new Joe Rogan show.
That would be impressive, and it would definitely pay off at that point, for sure.
Do you know who Tim Ferriss is?
Yeah.
So what you were telling me about before we started recording about the, you said Philippines, right?
Yeah.
You were looking into...
Yep.
That's like literally like half of his book. So he wrote a book.
Right.
Have you read The 4-Hour Workweek?
I have, yeah.
Is that where you got the idea from?
So I looked into it a while back when that happened, but I just didn't have enough work for it.
Yeah.
There's a couple guys on Twitter, Nick Huber, he does the Sweaty Startups. He and a guy named Sean Puri have talked about this company, Support Shepherd. And so that's where I just was like, I'll see what it's about.
Support Shepherd.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So
they're both part owners in it, but they basically are a sourcing agency who they interview candidates, do background checks, do all this stuff, take your job description, and then go and find like 5 applications. And so whatever the price you're going to pay for the person direct, the first year of your compensation, you're paying them 30% as like a finder's fee. So if you're paying them $10,000 for the year, then you're going to pay them $3,000 for the initial finding of that person. That's their business model.
But you only pay them if they find you somebody.
Correct. If you hire somebody.
Gotcha.
And then they guarantee whatever the first 6 months. It's like a lot of staffing agencies here.
Yeah.
But just for the Philippines, and that's what they specialize in.
That's smart, man.
Yeah. So I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but I probably will.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, just so your ROI, like if you'd spend $12,000 a year, you'd be spending that in 2 to 3, 3-4 months here if you had to hire someone locally.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's smart. Yeah, it's kind of like our Nepal team that we have. It just makes a lot of sense. And I know that there's some people that give you pushback. They're like, you need to hire local, and
right.
I'm like, well, there's 2 ways to look at that. To me, it's like, well, if we go out of business because we can't afford to hire anybody, we're not going to be able to hire anybody. We're not going to be able to do anything.
Yep.
And that's where I look at it. It's like I could either create content or not create content. And the only way I'm creating content is if I can't pay an editor here $2,000 a month. Like that's just not feasible for me.
Yeah, it's not.
300? Okay. Like now we can have a conversation.
Right.
So yeah, Daniel, welcome to the show. Thank you. I'm super excited for this conversation. For those that don't know, Daniel is a brother of Derek Doran, who is the first ever guest on the podcast and actually one of the most viewed podcasts so far. Daniel's story is awesome. Lights are on, baby. So Daniel's awesome. His story is one that when his brother told me about him, I'm like, I need to have him on the show. And actually, his other brother, David, who's my pastor, texted me, was like, dude, Daniel's coming to town. You got to get him on your show. And then David told me a little bit about his story, and I'm like, man, I want to know more. My listeners would love this. So thanks for coming on the show.
No problem.
I'd love to just jump into your story, man, because you shared a little bit, but not everything. So could we go back to college?
Sure.
And then maybe go from there. So you had what kind of degree in college?
Sports ministries, which is basically sports management, but with the Christian ministry focus.
Okay.
Hey, you're going to be an athletic director, a teacher, a coach at a Christian school, or do camps or whatever. That was the focus.
Nice.
Yeah.
And did you always want to be like back then in college, were you kind of like, hey, I'm just doing this because I like sports, but I have an entrepreneur itch in me? Or
No, never once did I have the entrepreneur itch in me. We did paper routes as kids, and it was a job. We just thought of it as a way to make money for college and different things like that. We did lawns, but I never once thought about owning a business at all until I can get into that. But in college, I just went to play sports. And then I was going to be a, athletic director potentially, or teacher at our school, inner city, which is here in Michigan. And ultimately, it was through who I married and the connection I made that got me down the road of entrepreneurship. So I can walk into that.
Yeah, let's do it, man. I'm thrilled.
So in college, I started dating my now wife.
Okay.
And went out to visit her family. And her family is pretty entrepreneurial. They're in, their dad has a construction business. They also are in a network marketing business. And so I actually saw a network marketing business and I was like, what is this? I don't get what this is about. But I know these other people who are successful at it, and I'm flexible right now. So I'll just move out there and work in construction and see what this is all about. So that was kind of the intro to entrepreneurship, was a network marketing business and some successful people who I saw with fruit on the tree of success financially. And I basically was like, all right, I'll move out there, learn from them, deviate from my plans of being an athletic director just to see what it's about. So that's how the initial
And that's when you moved to Seattle.
I moved from Detroit to Seattle. Then we got married out there, started working for her dad. So that was the initial thing, was I just had a job working in the field for her dad. And then I was going to potentially build this network marketing business on the side.
Okay. So that was the goal the whole time.
Once I decided to move out there, that's what I was going to give it a shot. I was going to try to build this thing. They said it was the best thing. A few other people I knew who were doing well in it. I was like, okay, well, we'll just give this thing a shot. You're telling me it's good. I see the fruit on the tree of these people, and I'll just see if we can do it.
Okay. So then you worked at the construction company.
Yep. Just sucking down fiberglass every day. Literally what we did was pipe insulation. So you take a 3-foot long stick of fiberglass pipe insulation, cut it to fit around every notch, and just put it on the pipes, go to the next section, put it on the pipes, carry stuff up and down buildings. This is in apartment buildings and commercial construction. So that was what I started doing in 2011. Okay. And so I did that for about a year, where I was just, that was it. I was just a worker. And then I was kind of doing the network marketing thing on the side, figuring out if I could do it, which that opened my mind to the idea of being in business for yourself, right? I ultimately didn't go down that road, but it opened my mind to it. And then in 2013, so I'd worked for my father-in-law for about a year and a half. A guy approached my father-in-law and I and one other person about, hey, I'm retiring from my business, and we have some of the same clients that you have. And so they were doing what's called fire stopping, which, not to bore you, but
no, this is great.
It's breaking up a building into fire rated sections. So we're in a 6-story building, 8-story building right now. If a fire starts on level 5, you want it to take a certain amount of time to get to level 6 and to level 3 and to the rooms next to it. We go in and install material that will help slow down a fire.
Like hard to burn material.
Hard to burn materials or stuff that expands and fills gaps. So that's...
Yeah, that's interesting though, because I always wondered, like, so skyscrapers in New York, for example, I always wondered like how, if like second floor gets inflamed, how they just don't go all the way up.
So you got sprinkler systems, and then you have passive protection, which is our stuff that would, when heat hits it, it expands and fills gaps and shrinks down on holes and does that stuff. So we install that stuff. It's a very regulated thing.
Okay.
But this guy came and said, hey, we're retiring. I'm stepping out of this. It was a one-man show. He just did a few jobs a year, but we knew him through some people. And so we were like, okay, maybe we'll work for the same clients and start a business. My father-in-law said to me and another guy, hey, you guys want to partner on this? I don't have the time or bandwidth to go after it, but if we all did it together, maybe we could, have a nice little side thing and grow our business. And I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. So basically I kept my job.
Okay.
And this other guy who worked with my father-in-law and I as well kept his job. And we worked extra in the evenings, selling, bidding, doing whatever we could to help grow that second business. And pretty shortly after, the third partner left. He just was like, I don't think this is going to work out. Yeah. So he left. And then I kept working for my father-in-law. And ultimately, this is when my kind of mindset shifted. I was like, I don't want to do this network marketing thing. I want to do this real business that is like tangible. I can like say, here's how we do this, and it's building things versus a network marketing business where it's you got to have the relationship side, you got to have all this other stuff and sell people on the idea.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to do that. I wanted to grow the traditional business.
Yeah.
And so that's where in 2013 we started that thing. And the guy that really retired, we couldn't reach him. We just started. And like we finished some jobs for him because he disappeared, just retired, stepped back. We finished the jobs and then started a new entity. So we just started going. And from 2013, when we started, to 2016, I still worked for my father-in-law part-time while growing that business, hiring people, selling jobs, managing stuff. So I was kind of working 2 full-time jobs doing those 2 things.
Yeah.
And then ultimately I realized my father-in-law and I kind of had different goals. And so I just said to him, hey, I'd love to buy you out now before I start to grow this thing more. And then I have to pay more to buy you out later.
Yeah.
And it worked out. And in 2017, I made the leap to go full-time and then run on my own and basically quit for working my father-in-law. And then
you're on
my
your
own.
own. So walk me through that conversation with your wife, because I mean, for those that are new to the show, we talk a lot about how entrepreneurship affects a marriage. And whenever you're joined in marriage, you might be more of a risk taker than your spouse might be, or vice versa. Now, your wife did come from an entrepreneurship family, which I think probably helped in the situation.
Yes.
But how did that go when you were like, hey, I think I want to buy out your dad?
Yep.
And I think we can make this thing go. Like, what was her reaction, and how did that happen?
To be honest, my wife was very comfortable with the idea of, and she liked the idea of me being my own boss. And the complications of having it be a father-in-law, your employer with the one job, and then your partner with another, and then it was the upline in the network marketing thing. It was a very complicated relationship. Unbelievable people, the greatest people ever. Love my father-in-law, I love my mother-in-law. But it was very complicated, and my wife was excited about the idea of us just being like
family.
Yeah. And then we have the business here.
Yeah.
And so when we actually all 4 sat down, it was my wife, her mom and dad, and I, and we all sat down and talked about it and went, where do we want to go from here? There's no ill will, no bad feelings whatsoever, but just we want to run after this thing. And the real hard part was he was my boss with my job, and I have to work hard there. But I own this other thing, and I want to work way harder there.
So there's your heart's over here, for lack of a better term. You're like, I want to work on this.
Yes.
I'm grinding through this just so I can work on this.
And he got that. And also, it was a tough conversation because I think we all just were like, this is hard. But my wife was on board with it. She was excited about the idea of just being family and then just having this.
Yeah.
And we were very conservative in our finances to where we had grown the business without ever taking money out because I had a job. And so the business was at a profitable point where it could pay me a salary that we could live on comfortably. It wasn't like we were just going for it. I had to make sure the business succeeded, but it was running well enough, and we had enough contracts locked up to where it wasn't this huge leap. Dave Ramsey talks about when you're like thinking about making the jump to go solo, make sure the boat's close enough to the thing before you jump in. And that was a big part of it. Was I worked for 5 years on both, and it was very hard to have 2 full-time jobs, but that allowed me to make the leap comfortably. I didn't even feel risky. Like I just felt like, all right, cool. We have a budgeted amount saved. The business has what it's need, and we have contracts. The beauty of construction is I can tell you right now how many contracts we have till 2024. So I don't know for sure that in 2025 we'll be okay, but I do know
there's a little security
for the next 2 years here's what we have in revenue and here's what we have lined up. So that gives you the security that you need to make that jump we had to make. So my wife didn't feel much risk there.
That's interesting. I kind of want to pause on this for a second because you said you worked double for 5 years.
Yeah.
Do you think that if you would have said 2 years in, before that the business was actually profitable enough to take on your salary, that it could take you less time to get to the point of full business ownership if you jumped in those flames earlier? Or based on your experience, you think, honestly, this was the best case scenario. I would recommend entrepreneurs take this route. Because there's challenges. It takes more time doing it the way you did it.
Yeah.
But it also is less stress and less risk. So
yeah, there's pros and cons to both. if I would have 2 years earlier done that, I probably would be a little farther ahead than I am right now, truthfully. But I don't know that I would change anything because I do tend to be risk averse. So I like the idea of working harder for a period of time to go, all right, there's less downside risk. One of my principles with looking at other businesses and doing things is I'm never going to risk everything for one thing. So like if I'm going to do a deal, that deal is going to not put everything at risk. It's only going to put that one thing I'm doing at risk. So that's the way I view it. I'm not very dogmatic on a lot of things. I think there's a lot of nuance that can be had. And for some people, it might work better to just make the leap. But it is a scary thing if you don't have that paycheck set of knowing what you live on and can we afford to eat next month. And depends on what your wife's, like you mentioned the wife thing. My wife for finances, as long as she knows the budget, she doesn't really care about the long-term stuff. She knows that she trusts me.
To
which
make it happen.
It works in our situation, but that's where she had the confidence to say, if you think we can do it, we can do it. So, and I'm very thankful because that makes it a lot more freeing for me to make decisions when I don't have her questioning or wondering if we can do it.
I mean, communication's key. I mean, really is where it comes down to. Communication's key. But I like what you're saying makes sense to, I think, a lot of the people that don't have that, like, I'm just going to jump off a cliff entrepreneur kind of mindset.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like your brother David would be a little bit more risk-takey than maybe you are. Maybe a little bit. He's calculated.
Yeah.
But he's willing to maybe do a little bit. And I could be wrong there. But I do think that there's nothing wrong with keeping your cards close to your chest and just planning it, going slow. And I like that strategy. For me, it was the exact opposite. I went from traveling on an evangelistic team, knowing nothing about insurance. And then May was my last paycheck. June, I started 100% commission. And September, I was getting married. And I was in a new state. And it forced us to grow fast. Like, it was kind of like we had no choice but to make stuff happen. But the amount of stress and headaches and crying, and like there were nights that I'd come home just like in tears of like deals that fell through because I didn't think I was going to be able to provide for my spouse. And that what you did is smart because you did avoid some of that stuff potentially.
I will say there's one caveat I should throw in there. The industry I'm in, when it comes to how you get money in the door, is far different. And so that's why I think I'm a little more hesitant, because right now, when we do a job, let's say we have a $100,000 job that I sell. Okay, we provide the service in January for 20% of that. We bill them. We don't get paid till March. Then we do February, bill them again. March, bill them again. And so I might land a $100,000 sale, but I'm not getting that money for potentially a year. And I'm paying the costs along the way, and every month
so you have
I'm
a cash flow problem.
There's a cash flow problem if you're going to just make the leap. So you can't pay yourself a salary. You have to cover all the material costs, labor, everything. And then GCs might not even they just might not pay you because something went wrong in the job. So that is a real thing that happens in our world of commercial construction because the banking system and the way that general contractors pay. So it is a different world. If I was in a business where I got paid tomorrow, I for sure would say push towards making a leap quicker because you can just work equals money in the door. In mine, I have contracts in 2024 that great. I did a good job selling them this year, but that money's not coming until end of 2024. We're paying the money before that, and all that cash flow of things is a little bit more complicated in the commercial world than in the residential world or in the insurance world, where I would push more towards the make the leap sooner. Because you can just fight through it and get revenue in the door tomorrow.
That's a good point. So it's very industry specific. I mean, like
it can be.
If we have an entrepreneur listening to this, I mean, it really is just kind of how quick can you get that cash flowing, for lack of a better term. It's really how quick can you get cash flow in your business. And for you, if you have a turnaround time of a year or what,
our days payable or days sales outstanding, which is basically the average of your accounts receivable, is 65 days.
Wow.
So from the time we bill them, it takes 65 days to get the check. And we've paid, by that time, we've done probably 2 months worth of work and the materials and all that stuff. We had to front the money for that. And then you'll get the check for the January stuff.
How many construction companies and stuff like you go into debt when they first start to be able to pay?
Loads.
Is that just kind of the method that a lot of people just max out some business credit cards, maybe get a bank loan or something, and that's how you start?
Yeah. I can tell you for us, if you're willing to do like a significant portion of your stuff is labor.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of them will start where I'm doing all the work myself and maybe have a helper, right? So your material costs are the only thing you have to cover.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working, getting things done. And then I have a helper, but then I buy the materials and then I invoice and then I wait and it comes in. So you're not like going to have a huge job day one that you have to front all the stuff for.
Yeah.
That's going to come in 3 or 4 years once you've been able to get the flow of cash going.
Mm.
But a lot of construction businesses go out of business because they either have too much debt build up because they take cash out thinking they're in a good place, spend it on a house or a toy or whatever. And then now there's a cash problem. So there's a lot of debt in construction businesses. And when you sell a construction business in the commercial space, a lot of times you're only selling it for, 1 to 2 times your net profit because there's so much volatility in that world. You just don't get a huge multiple. They can be great businesses for making money, but it's not like a tech software company where you're going to get a valuation of 4 times, 5, 7 times, whatever your annual recurring revenue is. But yeah, so it's a different industry, and every industry is very different. But the commercial construction world is notorious for a lot of debt, a lot of lines of credit. Lines of credit are really important to make sure you can handle those cash flow for people.
And then a lot of people, I mean, do you ever have to put liens on people's stuff? And,
yes.
I have a buddy who works in a gutter company, and he is the guy that has to call people and be like, hey, you're not paying your bill. We are putting a lien on your home.
Yes.
I feel like that also just complicates cash flow as well sometimes too.
It does, yeah. And so, again, we're talking about...
Sorry, I know we're in a niche right now, but it's just interesting to me.
It's hard because I actually have a gutter business as well that I'm part of. But with my initial business, the lien process is even worse. So we have a building right now that we did all the work for, and they still owe us about $15,000. They have declared that they're not going to pay anybody and they're going bankrupt. And so we have a lien on the building. And so we're trying to negotiate a way where we can still get that money at some point. But we most likely... hopefully they won't use this against me in the negotiations that are upcoming. I bet you will get 25% of what they owe us to clear the lien.
Okay.
Because I'm not going to hold that until somebody sells this $40 million apartment complex and then get settled by the new buyer, right? It's going to be like we have to negotiate to get this done if they need to do a refinance or if they do something like that.
Okay.
So we're probably going to settle for all right, we get 25%. That's an outlier, but we've had 3 or 4 in the last 8 years that have basically the building goes terribly wrong and everyone gets stiffed on it. But it's part of the business.
Is it? So you can't do anything. There's nothing,
no.
Yeah. Or it's not even worth pursuing at some level.
You have your lien rights and then you follow a checklist to make sure that when you get paid, you can get paid. But most times you're just going to negotiate and say, all right, let's clear this lien up. What do you give me to do it? And so we had one a couple years ago where they owed us $8,000. And we just said, he offered me 4. And I was like, all right,
sure.
The lien is released. So, yeah, it's a weird industry, but that's commercial. Commercial is a different game than
I know.
Residential, which is the gutter businesses a lot of times. We have a gutter business, and then we have a paver patio outdoor turf business. And that is a lot different. It takes 2 or 3 days for somebody to pay rather than 65.
Yeah.
So it's just a different world.
Yeah. So that's a perfect segue, I think, to continue your story. Sorry for that random name. It's just fascinating to me because I'm just like
good.
That cash flow, especially running the risk of people just not paying after you've done your job. And that's just a level of stress that I feel like
it is.
A lot of people couldn't handle or wouldn't want to handle.
The biggest thing to help you handle it is don't spend your money. To be honest, patience in business. I'm confident that the most important thing to if you want to continue to grow a business and be successful is keep your personal expenses very low and be conservative with how much cash you leave in the business. And then don't be afraid to take risks within the business. But so many people will be like, oh, we made this money, yank it out, go buy this, yank it out, go buy that. And then you're worried about, when are they going to give me that check? Whereas if you left the money in the business for a couple more years, now you have a nest of cash in there that, okay, so what if they're a little slow on paying me? I don't care.
Yeah.
All because you just delayed gratification.
Yeah.
Delay personal gratification and your business will be in a lot better shape.
Daniel,
that you're
you
not
realize this
stressed.
is 2023.
I know.
And that's not a popular take.
It's not a popular take, but
Yeah.
I think it's an important one if you want to run a business well, is to delay your gratification personally.
Yeah.
Because there's no better wealth creating vehicle than owning a business if you do it right. That's my personal take. And doing it right means you delay your personal gratification. You don't suck the business dry of every dollar to spend it on a boat or a 4-wheeler or a new workout gym and whatever. Like, you just stay conservative, and then in 5 years of that conservative behavior, then you can buy your boat or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I have a client. Well, it's probably a 1% chance they'll find this video, so it'll be fine. I have a prospective client that I'm working with on the business benefits side, trying to get them to offer benefits to their employees. And she is telling me that they can't afford it right now for whatever reason. But she just bought a yacht. This is the funniest. This is like same conversation. She's like, I want to do this. Her spouse owns another company that's currently my client. And so she was just going to kind of hop on the same program that he had. And so she, we've been working together for probably 6 months now. And I'm like, hey, let's just get this done. Your employees want this. Let's get it done, whatever. She's like, honestly, it's been slow, whatever. I can't afford it right now. And then she looks at me, hey, but let me show you about the boat I just bought. Dude, It's a freaking yacht. It cost $250,000.
Yeah.
And she's telling me that she can't afford a $20 a month per employee for 10 employees. And I didn't know how to respond, because part of me, I'm like, is this real life? Is but you're right. And so you pull chunks out of your business to now all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, we did have a slow month.
Right.
It is tight. And this is a perfect example of what you're saying.
And it's hard because most people who start a business do it because they want to be have the freedom and self, ownership of what they can do, but they also want to make money.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to say, okay, this is a long-term thing.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure. And there are people who have, I'm not saying one perspective is right or wrong. Like, if that lady's goal is to maximize her cash out of the business and doesn't care about the long-term health of her employees of the business, this is America, baby. Free enterprise.
Yeah.
She can do whatever she wants, but also that's not the best path for your business if you want it to be successful. Right. You're going to have high turnover. You're going to have cash flow issues. You're not going to be able to. And for me, I look at this as a 30-year game, and it's very important to have all these things dialed in correct in my business, far more than it is to have what I want personally.
Yeah.
Because if I commit to this game for 30 years, there's going to be a way better result personally too. But it's hard. It's not easy.
That's hard, man. And that's another conversation maybe we could talk about later, of the whole mindset, because there is a level of delayed gratification. That's true. But then I also think there's a level of enjoying life while you're young.
Yes.
And so for what you're saying, I agree 100%. I've struggled with that too. I think also scaling too fast is where a lot of people get in trouble.
Yep.
I know that's where I got into trouble, because we should be at the point right now where I don't have to worry about a thing.
Right.
But we're not, because I've made certain decisions to scale the business that have caused stress and caused us to go, ooh, I need to make sure all my clients pay their invoices because I have this person on payroll, this happening, this happening. And I think that's part of just doing business. But I do think that if I could have held on for maybe another year of me doing 70-hour work weeks,
right,
I wouldn't be in this position.
Yeah, but that is hard too, though. There is that work-life balance with hiring somebody to allow you to work 40 hours. Like, doing that for 70 hours a week for 3 years is better financially, but there is the personal aspect that you have to weigh out. You gotta weigh out not just monetarily, but the personal and wife and all that stuff.
All the fun stuff. I love that conversation. We could talk about that for 3 hours. Right. I think it's a cool conversation. So you had the business that you started. You bought out your father-in-law.
2017. January 1st, bought him out. And then from there, we just kind of grew for two years of running profitably, operating profitably. We're finally able to save some money and do some stuff to where we're like, all right. Because we rent out there in Seattle, it's a little more pricey than here. To give context, when I was about to move here and be a teacher and coach, I had an offer on a house for $40,000. Then I moved to Seattle, and by the time we were actually considering buying anything, it's like 400, right? So the housing market is just different. And so now we've, for 2-3 years, owned the business outright ourselves. 2019, we were like, all right, I knew some people who build houses and found out that if I could build my own house, maybe we could make some money.
Yeah.
As like almost a business. I'm like, all right, maybe I'll build a house, stand it for 2 years, sell it, build another one. And this will be a new side business I'm going to do because it's tax free if you build a house, stay there for 2 years and sell it, and I can make the equity. That distracted me from my business because I spent time and effort building a house, which worked out very well. But if I'd have spent the time and effort on growing my business, I would have grown more from 2019 to 2020 than I did by spending the time on my house build. So there was a trade-off there. So I did that. We got a house finally, got some security in 2019 to where we moved into a house that was a good place, had some equity built by the sweat equity that we put into the house. And then from there, I started to go, what's next in business? What's next? What are we going to do? Because I'm like a perpetual what's next kind of person. I'm always looking for what's the next thing to do, which can be bad, but can be good in times too. It's provided me a lot of opportunities. But so that's where we're at in 2019. Basically ran the business for 2 years solo, profitably, well, grew every year. And then I was like, at a point where I'm going, what do we do now? Do we just keep doing the same thing? And that's where I started thinking about buying businesses.
Yeah. So where did that come? Like, I'm glad we got here because this is where I want to pause. And this is buying businesses sounds stupid risky.
Yeah.
And for someone that says that they're risk averse, how did that kind of go and be like, because you had two options. You could either keep scaling your business that you were currently running and keep getting that to be a behemoth and get as big as possible. But instead you took a different path to a degree. I mean, you're still trying to grow, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But you took a different path of saying, no, I want to diversify and buy businesses. So why buy businesses instead of start businesses?
So I will say, was
that a fair question?
Yeah, no, it's a great question.
Okay.
So the commercial world, same problem. It's slow growth. I can only grow so fast. I can't get a job tomorrow. There are some I can, but there's a limit to that. Contracts are bought out 2-3 years in advance. And so it is a slow growing machine. The first thing we did do was try to grow that business. And I did start a Portland division. So now there's a Portland division down there with a handful of guys down there and a key guy running it. And I'm looking to add waterproofing, and I'm looking to add other things with that business. So the primary first thing I would try to do, and am still doing, is growing that business because it takes the least amount of capital, least amount of risk to do. And so I am doing that. But if I have profits that are coming out of the business and I don't want to spend them, I can put them into the stock market or real estate or something like that and get a 8% return. Or I could go, well, what if I can find a way to buy or start a business and generate a 30 to 40% return. And it's something I own long term, and I can control the growth of it. I can't control the growth of an index fund. If I buy a small business and I put a lot of effort and time into making it grow, it could double its revenue next year. I've conservatively lived and put money away for here's the safe net. Now we're going to be very aggressive with the things that we have. And so I'm trying to figure out ways to put money to work that will create the most return. And that's what led me to looking at buying businesses. It was, I would like to say I was in it a little before all the people got super excited about it. Like if you look online, it seems like everybody's talking about this now. They buy boring businesses, do this stuff. And I was like, man, how did it all happen at the same time? But I think COVID kind of opened people's eyes up to it too, a bit. But yeah, that's what started it. And I guess probably the thing that prompted me was when I bought my father-in-law out, I didn't have the money to buy him out. So I came up with a very creative deal structure to where it worked very well for him, minimized my risk, but allowed me to buy him 100% out day one and gave him a lot of upside with me taking less risk. And I went, why can't I come up with a deal like that for another business? And so my idea of buying businesses was not go spend a ton of money and buy a huge business. It's how can I be creative in deal making to buy a deal that's worth far more as it is, but that guy has some incentives that are aligned with me. And if I succeed, he succeeds. And if I fail, he fails. It's been through
that's
that.
Smart.
That's more of, I'd say, what prompted me was I can be creative.
Yeah.
There's no rules on how you buy a business. There are some, like him. me be clear.
There's legal rules.
But there's no rules as to how you pay the person. Like if I wanted to buy your insurance business, I could come to you and say, hey, I'm going to give you $100,000 for your business. Or I could come to you and say, hey, Dillon, I want to grow your business to this level. And I'm going to do it over the next 4 years. And look at my track record of all the things I've done. I want to give you $25,000 right now, but I want to give you 15% of profit for the next 10 years. Why can't I do that? I can. If you buy into me, then I can create a deal like that where there's less risk for me, more risk for you. But if you buy into me, you might go, hey, I'll ride along with this and I'll work a little less and it'll be better for me. There's an upside of
over 100, significantly, potentially over 100.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where that's what's prompted me is like, okay, maybe I can find ways to do this creatively. Because every time I've done something that's worked, it's been creative. The house build, I did it all without a mortgage by just like figuring this out. And then I got the mortgage after the fact because construction loans are complicated. So I just was like, you could do this a different way, right? So I found a way to do it. Then I got refinanced after the fact and was able to make, 25% equity on my house. But it was a creative thing. My brain works like, how can we creatively come up with a deal that will work? And that's
smart, man.
That's the thing that I think there's been so many things I've looked at where I've said, no, don't get me wrong. But if you look at 100 things and try, you might find one that works.
So you have how many businesses now?
It's 3 right now. Kind of 4 because we started a division within another business it's really its own business.
Its own entity.
Yeah. So we have 3 businesses.
But that's crazy. And when did you start Doran Holdings? Like
So I registered that name, I don't know, in 2019 when I was like, oh, maybe I'll start buying businesses. And then I didn't really do anything with it. It just was sitting there. And then in 2021, I bought a business that fit in with our current business and just kind of brought it in to the same business under the same fire stopping business. It was somebody who did spray intumescent paint. Okay. And I was like, okay, this could be a good fit. I hired the guy, brought him in, and he's in. So that was the first thing I bought after my father-in-law's business or partnership with me. Oh. So I bought that guy, brought him in. And then I started looking on broker dealers, websites, everywhere, just scanning, calling people, looking at all the financials. And I don't know how many I looked at. A ton of businesses. And then I found this one that I could tell the owner wrote it. And it was way out of my price range. But I still called. So I called him and I could tell it was the owner I'm talking to. And I said, why are you selling? And he was hesitant to tell me why. He's a young guy. But then ultimately he told me why. And he had to sell for religious reasons. And I went, I can't afford this. But I think I can find a way to make this work. So I said, we need to meet. Let's get lunch and let me talk to you. And so we did. We got lunch, and this was in 2021, and we talked for the next 11 months.
Wow.
And I was like, we should do this. We should do this. Here's why. Here's why we should do this. It'll work really well for you. And I had to build trust with him for 11 months to get it figured out. And then finally we came up with terms that would work. And then I bought it to where he still runs the business completely. I meet with him twice a month, sometimes more than that, but he runs the day-to-day business, and we run the back end, and then we basically are a partnership, but I own 100% of the business. But he has a profit share agreement and a salary as the CEO of the business and runs it and he's growing it. And he's a young guy that's just crushing it. He's doing great. But yeah, it was, again, a very unique deal where I could not have done it without that kind of a weird scenario where I could structure a deal that he's betting on us long-term and is willing to take less money for the business than he wanted to.
Yeah, and there's 2 quick lessons that pop out to me. Is number 1, you were patient in finding the right deal.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people are like, I want to do this thing. I'm going to sacrifice what probably isn't the right decision out of excitement. And you were patient and were like, I'm going to find the right company that fits what I'm trying to do. And then when you found it, you were persistent at saying, dude, no, like, let's do this. And in sales, persistency is everything. Yeah. And so that's really cool, man.
Yeah, because honestly, with my style of buying businesses, I was actually on a Zoom call just before this. It's really, I'm selling them on me and our businesses and what we're going to do long term. Yeah. So most businesses, they just want the money and they want to get the best price and leave. But I'm functionally a salesman in a way where it's like, hey, here's what I love about business. Here's what I want to do. I want your employees to make more than they've ever made. I want to get them health insurance and 401k. And some business owners will care about their employees after they're gone. And so I can tell them, here's all the things we're doing for our current employees. Here's what we do for these other things. And I'm looking to hold this thing for 30 years and make your brand the best brand it's ever been. And so I'll be your steward of your brand moving forward and help whoever's running it run it well. And I'm not looking to pull money out. I'm looking to grow this thing. And so that can work for a very small, select set of business owners who are looking to sell because they're like, it's my baby. And I don't want my baby to just disappear when it's gone.
Yeah.
I want to find somebody who can steward it. And so that it's not going to be like I'm going to have a huge amount of opportunities, but the ones that I can get hopefully will be good ones that will align with kind of my objectives and incentives for our businesses.
Now, are you trying to keep all of your purchases within the construction field, or are you open to exploring into whatever you think makes a good business purchase?
Initially, I was calling it blue collar capital.
Okay,
and I was like,
that's fun.
I was gonna be like, all right, we're gonna buy blue collar businesses, but somebody had the domain name with this correct spelling, and so I spelled it with a K, and then people got confused, and I was like, all right, I give up on this. We're just going with Doran Holdings. So I was excited about like blue collar capital. We're gonna only buy blue collar businesses, but then I went, you know what? I love business. Yeah. I don't love construction. I like it in a way, but I don't have I'm actually not that good at building things. I did it and I've worked and then done that stuff, but I'm not like a construction guy who wants to only own those. There's a unique thing that construction businesses are hard to sell. And so I think there are more opportunities for me to buy those types, and it's what I know, so I can do it. But if somebody came to me tomorrow and said, hey, I have this business that's a manufacturing business, which I did look at one here in Detroit that was for sale, I would do that. Or if it was a software business that for some reason wasn't trading at 30 times whatever, then I wouldn't say no to anything. I feel like I've been served well by never saying no to anything. I will say no to a lot, but I'll always look at it, because even if I look at it and decide no, I learn a lot in the process. Like, I didn't know that manufacturing businesses have this, and this thing going on. That information, it's great. It's a learning process. I'll look at it and I'll see if it could work, and then I learn a lot on the way.
So then when you buy, it's like, I mean, you've done this 3 to be 4 times, and you're looking this. Is the goal always to try to retain the owner for a certain period of time to help with the knowledge of the industry, or is part of the buying process like, okay, I also need to now find another expert in this field to come in and run the company?
Yeah.
How does that work?
It is very unique to each business. Like the business I talked to today, the guy's been doing what he's been doing for 42 years. And so he's in the field side, he's an expert. But they have enough guys in the field who are also experts that it's not really that critical that he stays on. And the office end, I can train anybody on. And I've got people who we can teach the back end. The back end is usually not that hard. In the construction, the stuff we're looking at, he needs to have some industry knowledge on how we build these things. And so, ideal world, I would like to buy a business where the owner or a key employee stays on, and I give them a percentage of profit share, basically, salary plus, because that ensures the risk for me. If I can say, basically, I have a partner who's a salary plus, and they're not a true partner, I do like this thing called phantom equity, where if they leave, they don't get anything anymore. Because if you have a partner and they just decide they're not working anymore, they're still your partner. So I prefer to have a profit share where they get X percent like they're a partner, but if they leave, that goes away. So I want to have something where I can have an owner or a key employee like that. And most of the things I've looked at, the 3 businesses I have all had that. They had a person who's running it who stayed on. This business I was looking at today, I would have had to replace that guy. So that would be a harder piece to the puzzle, but I think it could be done, and I would find.
You also just don't know the amount of people in the companies that, if given the opportunity, would rise to the occasion, and they've never been given the opportunity. Right. And so that's also an interesting thing. Dude, this excites me for a couple reasons. Number one, I've always wanted to invest in businesses. Like, I've just thought, you watch Shark Tank and you're like, dude, this would be sweet. And then, but never believing that I'd be able anytime soon to get to the cash flow place to be able to just put down $250,000 on a business.
Right.
It makes you think that it's just not possible. And what you did is you went to the drawing board and you're like, hey, I want to do this, but how can I make this work
Right.
on my terms?
Yep.
And if someone's going to be willing to accept those terms, then that's great. And if they're not going to, then that's fine too.
Right.
And that's awesome, man. That's exciting. I think it's exciting for a lot of the listeners too, because it just shows that whatever you're working on, there's a creative path to solve that problem.
I think that is one of the most important things for people. If you want to get ahead, like be thinking about creative ways to do so. You're probably familiar with like house hacking, the idea of house hacking, or like
no, I'm not actually.
You'd buy a house that's like obviously not that great, and find a way to make it a little better, and you're going to make some equity on there. Mm-hmm. Or if you're single, buy a house and rent out 3 rooms, right? Or whatever your situation. Me, it was I could buy a house, or I bought a piece of land where I literally went and knocked on the door of the lady and said, "Hey, can we buy this lot?" with my kids, so she felt like she should sell it to us, and it worked. Bought it below market and then did it ourselves. Like find things that you can be thinking about. All right. And I'm not saying money's everything, but if you want to get ahead, you're far better served going and doing the work of seeing what can I be creative about to find a way to make some extra money, or to do an investment, or to buy a deal. Why can't I do this? Rather than just like, I can't do this. Go like, how could I make it happen? And then run the numbers and be like, can I make this happen or not? And then a lot of times you'll say no. But man, learning so much in the process while you explore all these new opportunities. Like Shark Tank, watching it, you learn so much about little businesses. When you go to a business broker website and you just read about it, and then you say, hey, I want more information about this business. They send you the financials. You read the financials. You ask 4 questions. You learn a lot. So even if you have $0, just go ask about the broker thing. Eventually they'll catch on that you're the guy that's just asking all the questions. You don't have any money. But you learn, and those skills you learn along the way will allow you to come up with a creative way to do something in the future.
Yeah, that's good advice. And I'm just thinking, like, man, I have like 1,000 questions I want to ask now. But I guess what I really want to kind of know is like, was there a mentor in your life that kind of helped you see this path, help you be creative, or was it just maybe a conglomerate of people that kind of you've pulled from?
Yeah.
How important is maybe finding somebody that has walked the walk at some level before and picking their brain and developing a close friendship with a mentor? Maybe, I don't know if you've had any experiences like that, or if you can speak to that.
So, I mean, I would say my life has been hugely impacted by a handful of people, and also by a handful of books and courses and things. I went to college, got a degree, and knew nothing about business in any way.
Right.
And then the first thing I did once I was looking at, I want to do business, I had this partnership that I was a part of, and I started reading EntreLeadership from Dave Ramsey. And I paid money to join their mastermind thing. And I started learning from a group of people there, and went through all his courses 20 times on it, just learning as much as I could. So it was mentorship from a distance there. But then I also had a guy named Peter Sullivan, who was at Northland the same time I was at Northland, and he had bought and sold business that he had. And he's been a mentor of mine for the last 10 years. I don't bother him that much, but I've always offered to help him with anything he could. And then I get around him when I can. My dad he was on the board of a thing he was doing. And I said, hey, can I fly in and sit on this board meeting? And then can I do this and that? And so I spent, $500 to get a plane ticket to go to Greenville to sit on a board to get around that guy, because I knew the other people on the board were 5 other business owners. And then I, after the meeting, went, hey, can I meet with you? And then I met with the guy who owned a plumbing company and talked with him for half a day about my father-in-law, who's my partner, and how do I get what should I do? And he helped me just basically think through, well, what do you want to do? And do you want to buy this thing out? And how could you do it? So it's just always asking questions of people who are farther ahead of you served me a ton. We have a lot of people in our networks of people who are very successful, and I've always asked them a lot of questions whenever I can. So actually a guy named John Taylor, he was the CFO for Jackson Dawson for a long time. And I've had a number of conversations where I sit down with him and go, hey, what do you think about this? What am I missing here? So asking questions from people who are way farther down the road has been a huge part of my journey and success, because I would not have known most of the things I know.
Yeah.
Like, it takes way longer. You shorten your you shorten the time it takes, right, to get where you want to go by learning from other people's experience rather than your own.
Yeah, I think it's Jordan Peterson who said it's a smart person who who will ask a bunch of stupid questions once.
Yeah.
So ask stupid questions, and smart people ask stupid questions, but you're only going to have to ask them one time.
Yeah.
And when we say stupid questions, it would seem stupid to somebody that has the experience, but once you ask the question, you never have to ask it again because you get the answer.
I am a huge fan of asking questions that if you think you're going to look dumb, ask it anyways.
Yeah.
And say, hey, explain it to me like I'm 5. Because who cares what people think of you?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, honestly.
If you don't know, like if you were to tell me about insurance right now, I could go, yeah, and act like I understand. And then be like, walk out of the room not knowing it. Or I could just go, hey, wait, can you walk back and just I don't get what you just said. Could you explain it to me again? But people just don't do that because they just blow past it.
Yeah.
With especially if you're ever working with, throw this out there, business owner tip. If you're ever talking with your CPA or somebody else, a lawyer, just tell them, just like, hey, stop. You're talking, I'm paying you.
Yeah.
You're talking over my head, and I'm going to either pretend like I understand you and just say yes, or you're going to educate me on this right now and talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Because I don't understand what you're saying.
You don't want to be Googling what your accountant's saying as you're talking on the phone.
You don't.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to do that if you're a business owner and you don't understand something, or a business broker, and they're saying things that you don't understand. Just go, hey, stop and explain to me like I'm 5 because I don't get it.
Yeah, because there's a level of, I think, just pride that comes in us that says, I don't want to look the fool. Like I don't want to be looked like I'm not an expert. And when in reality, I think a successful entrepreneur is someone who is confidently humble and humble enough to embarrass themselves, potentially risk embarrassment to get the right answer. And there's never embarrassment. Like, I mean, I know I've asked a bunch of dumb questions and it's almost always met with people wanting to help you.
Yes.
And it's very rarely met with people saying, who the F are you to ask me this stupid question? They're like, oh yeah, this is what I meant by that.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times we get in our own heads. You want to portray ourselves of someone who we're not.
Right.
And the only way you learn is by asking questions. And we live in a society that everyone wants to pretend they know all the answers.
Right.
And that's not how you learn. You don't learn by pretending you know everything. You learn by saying you know nothing. And then that's the first step to learning something.
Yeah. I do want to throw out, like, we've made it sound like it's all sunshine and rainbows.
We're getting there. I love that.
Okay, good. I was going to say, make sure we get to that.
We're going to get to that. So yeah, let's turn to that.
I just got to make sure that it doesn't come
Challenges
across like
were coming up. Challenges were coming up.
Good.
Yeah, so let's talk about some challenges. And before I forget, I do want to, with challenges, I want to talk about the pros and cons of side hustles.
Yeah.
So we can talk about that later or now. I don't care. But let's talk about it now, and then we'll go to challenges at the end. So pros and cons of side hustles. We talked a little bit before. I have my Aflac agency. COVID came in and destroyed our business. And I say it destroyed our business. It more destroyed me.
Yeah.
That's probably honest. Like the honestly, it destroyed my motivation, my hope, my willingness to put myself out there, my confidence. Then by it destroying me, it destroyed the business. That's probably the better way of putting it. And so then I looked at some side hustles. And what I realized about side hustles is they can be awesome, but it seems like whenever my side hustle is going really well, my main business is always struggling.
Yeah.
And then when my main business is going well, my side hustle isn't doing as good. And I personally, now I'm also dumb, so it could just be a Dillon problem, but I personally have not seen where all are going up at the same time. It's generally like you have to make a sacrifice somewhere. So let's talk about side hustles. What do you think about them as being an entrepreneur, business owner, even working at a 9-to-5, trying to start some side stuff? Like, what are some of your thoughts on side hustles?
If you are working a job as an employee and you can't turn a lever to make more money, like you're a salaried employee who's making $50,000 a year, and you can't say, I'll work a little extra and make 55 or 60, then side hustles you should do them. If you want to make more money, do the side hustle. Start figuring out ways to improve your earning potential, whatever. If you are a business owner who has levers they can pull in their business and instead is thinking about how can you make money on the side, I do think it will cause your business to suffer. I think it will typically, and this isn't always, I'm never dogmatic about anything, but if I know for a fact when I built that house thinking I'm going to make money on the side by building equity, and every day I go to the house after work and I do this thing and I do that thing and I'm running the general contractor for this, I guarantee you I could have made more money had I hired the build and I spent that time on my business. But I didn't. And do I care right now? No, because it was a good experience. I learned some stuff and I had some fun and did it. But the better result financially and for my business would have been to spend the time and effort on my business and let the experts spend the time on the house build and just pay a little more and go make it up in the business, because I could pull levers to make money there. That would have made up the difference. But I don't think they're bad. I just think you need to know there's trade-offs. When I go and spend my time doing DoorDash or working at a part-time job where I could have just spent an extra 4 hours working on reaching out to cold calls for people or going out and door knocking to get more clients for my Aflac industry, whatever it is, like, I think that's going to actually make you more in the long run if you stay focused on your business. But if you have a short-term cash issue, I'm not against them. I just think there's trade-offs. If you're going to do it.
Yeah, I think that's what people need to understand is the trade-offs. Also, the question is, as a business owner, do you know your ROI for your time?
That is a true question for sure. And that's where there's a lot of people that overdo that sometimes. But I agree. Like, you have to think through what's the best use of my time. And if you're going and doing Uber Eats and DoorDash are an easy one.
Yeah.
You're going to go make $20 an hour doing that. Is there anything else where you can generate more than $20 an hour on that time? And I think if you're an owner, typically the answer is yes.
Yeah.
But the short-term need of getting cash in the door quick overshadows that at times, because it's that ROI on your money isn't necessarily like as addictive as the short-term hits of the cash in the door, because it just feels different.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's something that I don't think about a lot. It's also the ROI isn't 100% the argument. It also is how quickly is that money going to hit your bank account.
Yeah, that's
a point that I don't think that I think about that much too.
And there are different stages in life where people need that.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you need that for your family. And yeah, it's just the thing. Like, but if you look at, I don't know if you've ever watched Alex Hormozy's stuff or Gary Vee. Oh, dude,
Gary Vee, yeah.
You haven't watched Alex Hormozy?
Not at all.
Oh my goodness, you got to find
Gary Vee.
Everyone on the channel, if you need this, Alex Hormozy. He built a company called Gym Launch, and then a company called Allen, and another company. He is right now my favorite person to consume content from in the whole world of business content, because he is just straight to the facts of, like, here's what you do. And he's not selling you anything. He's not doing any courses or anything like that. He's just going, here's how I built what I built, and here's good content. So he's a great guy to listen to. The Dillon show is the number one show on YouTube, though. That
by far.
I would say that's your first, and then second would be Alex Hormozy. And then from there, everyone else. But those two are the top two.
I have seen this guy on YouTube.
He's got some very good breakdowns, a free course on his website called $100 Million Leads, and it's a great 7-video series on that. But he talks about side hustles a bit on there, and other people do too. And I think they can be great for a period of time, but you have to know the trade-offs. So that's my thoughts on side hustles. I will not do a side hustle at my point in life because I have 5 kids and I have 3 businesses. And if I was going to go do a side hustle to make some money, it would just be like, so do I spend the time with my family, or do I spend the time like?
Where does that sacrifice come from?
I'm giving up somewhere. Now I do side hustle in a way where I'm looking at what business I can buy, but I'm not getting paid for that. That's like I'm just looking for opportunity. So I don't think looking for opportunity is bad, but you always need to know the trade-offs of your primary business will suffer. Yeah. Until you have someone else who owns that business to the level of, like, you have, like, my business, Stable Construction. The CEO's there. If I do something else, the business doesn't have any impact. He's running it, and he owns it like he runs it. That's when you can kind of go and get distracted. But if you don't have somebody who owns that business, like from a emotional perspective, drive, then you're going to hurt your business by not focusing on it. For sure.
Yeah, I think dude, even
Are we doing a side hustle right now?
That's what I'm saying. That's where it was coming from. That's why I'm like, shoot, dang it.
But that's okay. I'm not saying it's bad. I think I think as long as you realize that
correct. There's trade-offs that happen.
You could probably be doing a little better with your Aflac business if you didn't do this. Yeah. But you want to do this, and that's fine. Like, who cares? Yeah,
because it's funny, it just kind of hit me. I'm like, oh, dang it. We're doing a side hustle right now.
Existential crisis in the middle of
brain freezing.
In the middle of podcast.
Because not only does it take up my time during the workday, I also pay for editing. And it's like, there's like, let me justify.
I think it's awesome what you're doing. And I'm doing some of that too right now on my end. Nothing public facing, but I think it's great to have side hustles as long as you understand
the trade-off,
what you're giving up for that thing.
Yeah, and there's also so for the show, just to make me feel better about all this, I think that the long-term growth. So I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist. I believe that the show is going to take off.
Yeah,
I believe that. Like deep down, like we're going to sell merch. We're going to have it's going to be a big show. One day we're going to be interviewing big names, and that's just what I believe.
Whoa, one day you're going to be... No, I'm just kidding.
One day in the future.
I feel like...
Starting today. Daniel Doran. And then also the other thing was like, I viewed this as marketing for my agency.
Yeah.
So, because it's going all over LinkedIn. My LinkedIn follower account has shot through the roof because I've been posting clips on my LinkedIn and like people are getting like one clip I post already has over 20,000 impressions on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And so that's 20,000 people seeing that I do Aflac, I do life insurance. And so it was a intentional marketing push. When I said I was going to be spending money on editing, I didn't have a marketing budget for my agency. That is my marketing budget. Yeah. So I actually slotted now as marketing budget $200 a month for editing.
Yeah.
And so I did think through that stuff, but it is funny to me because you're talking and I'm like, this is literally so good because I do think sometimes I get so wrapped up in this because this is fun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Door knocking and sales calls is not fun.
Not as fun.
And it is a really healthy reminder for me just to remember, hey, like I am sacrificing something by doing this. And right now, it might be helping people. It might be good content, but I'm not making money doing this.
Right.
And so that is a good reminder for me. And I think it's a good reminder for a lot of people. Dang it, man. I feel challenged.
Turn, right?
Yeah, that was awesome.
I was like, as I said it, I was like, oh, yeah. No, it's good, though. I like it.
Yeah, it's good. So let's talk about challenges. We've done about me.
Yeah.
I feel like crap now. So let's just keep going. Being an entrepreneur is not a walk at the park. It's not a walk in the park. There's a lot of stress that happens. There's a lot of tears, pain, stress. I think entrepreneurs can be very prone to just very stressful, anxiety-filled living. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to just do like story time deal. Yeah. Like if we could just jump into some stories of challenges, like some real examples, if you wouldn't mind. I know it's a very specific question, but do you have any challenges or stories of like, this was really hard for me? This could be in the first business. This could be during your buying, maybe some really stressful periods, and then what you did to try to like kind of make it through those.
Yeah, we're at a very like healthy place right now. For 10 years, I would say the first 5.5 to 7 were hard. Like they were very, very hard. And it was hard financially. It was hard relationally with my wife. Not like we didn't have any huge problems.
No fist fights.
She didn't beat me up or anything. But we did not talk that much because I was working so much. Like my wife had 3 kids, 3 and under, and I'm working. I never take a day off for those first few years. It was just like nonstop work. And I can think of one example would be when we were first getting going. I was working the job for my father-in-law. We had this midnights job, and I work from midnight to 7 a.m. Then I go to another site and work from 7:38 till like 3 p.m. Then I'd come home and sleep for a couple hours, and then I'd go to work on bids in the evenings. And then I'd go to sleep for a couple hours, get up, go the next day. This was like a few week stretch of this job where and all these things were happening at once. And it was like I didn't even see my wife for 2 weeks. I was going crazy, like just my brain was fried, and it was just nonstop for that. We didn't do anything the first 5-6 years of business to go like get away. Like I'd come here for vacation 1 week a year, usually Christmas, to see my family. And other than that, we never took a day off. Like never took a day off. Just work. Because that's what we had to do out there. And it was very difficult. And you go, are we going to actually make it through this? Are we going to actually like succeed in this business? And even up until a couple of years ago, there was a time where you're just like, man, I just hate this. But you love it at the same time. It's a roller coaster ride as an entrepreneur. There are times with people issues where you're just like, we have between the businesses probably around 40 employees between the three businesses, maybe actually 45 or 50, but where you have people issues where you're just like, oh man, salary W-2 job with no stress. Like I'd be home not thinking about this. And instead I'm at 8 p.m. just thinking about these problems that I have to deal with because the buck stops with me.
Here. Yeah.
And it's Derek and I have texted about it, be like, dude, this is a beast. It's hard because you just have a different level of weight and responsibility of things when you know everyone's jobs also depend on me.
Yep.
And I'm not giving you like very great specific examples, but there have been times where I just look at it and go, this is hard. Why am I putting myself through all this when I could just not work as hard and not have the ambition? We could just stay the size we are and be a lot less hard. Like, there's also that aspect. Like, why grow when you could just live and care only about this level?
Yeah.
But the game aspect of it to me is what keeps me going. It's like, it's a game. It's a fun game that I'm playing to learn. Almost with your podcast thing, you told me all about all these analytics and how your things are going, how they're performing. I view my business that way. How are these things performing? And that gets me through the downtimes of how frustrating it could be to have an employee issue or how hard it can be to deal with. One of our businesses is really struggling with this, and I feel like there's a problem we need to solve, but there's, complications to it where I can't solve it the way I'd want to because I have a partner in that business and it's just complicated. So there's been self-induced stress, self-induced problems, not myself problems where other things have come from the outside and we have problems, but it's a roller coaster ride of struggles to get a business up and running successful. And the thing I would say is don't launch a business and start a business unless you realize that.
Yeah.
Like there's all these people saying it's a great thing to do.
Yeah.
But I would say if you have a really good job, unless you got a burning desire inside you to go do it, don't do it. Keep that salary and just keep your easy life unless you have a burning desire.
If you are insane, you should do this.
Yes.
If you're not, actually, Derek and I talked about this on our podcast.
Yeah.
Like the lie of entrepreneurship online, where you see people driving their Ferrari. We were joking about I forgot the guy's name.
Ty Lopez.
Yeah, Ty Lopez. When he's like, I love my books, and he's showing off his Lamborghini.
Knowledge.
Yeah, knowledge. Yeah, and in all reality, man, and at least in my life, it's been like it feels like the good times are 30% and the hard times are 70%. When you're first starting. And then, we've had some really good moments. We've also had some rock bottom moments. Like this year has been hard for the business. Like with inflation and per employee buying like 60% less. So then you have to find like 60% more. So like it never stops. And like you would think that after 5 years of doing something, I was told, isn't that great when it starts with that?
Yeah.
I was told when I started this business, give it like 5 years and then you're going to have renewals that like blah, blah. Like it's just like
you build
5 years is the whatever. And it just isn't true. It can be. We also had a pandemic that kind of ruined this. So I might be on year 3, more like it. But it does take, man, just a level of determination, humility, and a little bit of insanity to keep going forward.
It does. And I'm convinced that even if you get it all dialed in perfectly, you're still going to have it because unless you just completely step out of the business, you still wear that stress of everyone's earning depends on me.
Yeah.
This business is success. Everything stops with me.
Yep.
And there's always other people coming to eat your lunch. Like there's always other insurance brokers who are trying to sell the same thing. There's always other construction companies. There's always and it's not to be like scared, but dude, I think about that. I go, oh shoot, what if they pass me? What if people like start working harder than me? And it's like a perpetual thing in the back of my head of like, how long is this going to last? And if I don't grind And even if I do, what is something, whereas if you're just an employee, not in a bad way, let me be clear. I have nothing wrong with employees. And I think it's a great thing if you're a good employee who's a great family man, great member of whatever community you're part of, totally fine. And honestly, totally respect that.
Yeah.
But if you're an entrepreneur and you're weighing all that stuff and you know that it's a constant battle of this is a free market, people are coming after me. I'm coming after other people.
Yeah.
Like I have targets that I'm going for that I want to take out
and
I want to grow.
You too. Exactly.
And so you got to know that, and you can't ever let your guard down and be like, just relax, because ultimately your business will slack. Your business success will fade over time. And if you look at the track record of what businesses succeed and how long they succeed for, it's not a forever thing that just happens easy. It won't ever level off and just be, oh, it's all cake. There are the outliers who will build a business that's going to be like that. But
yeah, and I'll tell you this: when you start slipping, it's really hard to get back on track. When you let your foot off that gas pedal, I've seen this in my own business. Like when I first started, I was like number one at everything at all times. Like I was the number one new agent in the state of Michigan. I went on every single rewards trip. I went on, like that was my thing. And then when I say that COVID wrecked my confidence and wrecked a lot of what we had going on, you know, getting back to where I was and where we were has been triple as challenging.
Right.
Just even fighting the demons of your mind and fighting just am I in the right career now? And should I even be a salesman? And should I even be an entrepreneur? Because at that point, because when you're young and hungry, and things are going well, even if they're not going well, but you don't know any better.
Yes.
Yeah. Like you're a bull in a china shop and you have like blinders on and you're going. But then all of a sudden life has this way to crack those blinders open to where your goal used to be simple. And then after a couple hard conversations, a couple fails, a couple pandemics, a couple times where you have to look at your wife and you say, hey, we are in trouble this month. And we better pray that God gives us a deal in the next month or two because we are scraping right now. Yeah. So please, let's go light. Those blinders start opening, and then all of a sudden, those W-2 jobs look really enticing. And we've talked about this on the podcast. When we talk, this is an entrepreneurship podcast. It is an honorable thing to just work and spend time with your family. That is great. We're not crapping on that. But if you want to be an entrepreneur, be aware the longer you go at it, the more you see sometimes the grass always looks greener. And when the grass is looking greener, you forget about how green the grass is actually in your lawn. And then you stop tending it. And you think that if I would just, this is where side hustles come in. If I would just be able to jump over the fence just a couple times. Right. And that's what's been going, that's the demons and the battles that I've been facing with my own business. And so what you're saying is right, man. Like, sorry, I just went on that.
No, tangent. That's good. Because honestly, one thing that happened last year, so you had the mortgage rates like at 2.5%, 3% for like 2 years. And I knew a few mortgage brokers, and I meet with a few guys who they tell me everything about their finances and businesses and everything. And I was like, how is this for real, bro? This seems unreal. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I worked so hard to make X, and I have this many employees and this much overhead and this much risk, and he's working this hard to make this. And I'm like, oh goodness, what am I doing?
I am in the wrong industry.
What am I doing? But seasonally, there will be times where industries thrive and people make tons of money and things go like that. And it is dangerous, like you said, to watch other people and go, oh man, that looks better. That looks easier. And then get distracted. So I think it's just a dangerous thing if you're not committed and all totally bought into saying, I'm gonna execute this thing. One of my bigger fears is like thinking about how hard it was, because I still work hard. Don't get me wrong, but I have a lot more flexibility.
As you should.
I'm here for 2 weeks. I went back for 2 days really quick to have some meetings and then came back here. But I'm here for 2 weeks now. I could not do that for a long time. And sometimes I think about if I had to start over from scratch, would I do it again? Because of how hard it was to get through that mud and junk. And I think about it, I'm like, I think I had the guts still, but some of it was that beauty of not knowing how hard it was going to be. And I never had it easier. I just was like, I grinded into sports in college. Then I went straight to work and I was like, so I work all day. This is what I do. I just work all day. And I have a kid within 10, 13 months of being married, and I just have to work. And I work nonstop.
Especially when you have a passion, it doesn't really even feel like work. So you're like, this is fun. I will
tell you though, it didn't feel like I didn't have a passion. I hated it initially because I was breathing fiberglass.
Yeah.
But I was just like, my kids got 8 and we were making $20 an hour. And I was like, this is it. And I got to work and I got to build this network marketing thing to get free. But I just thought that that's what I was going to do. And I worked like to the bone. And then fortunately, the Lord opened doors up to where I was able to get the opportunities there was. And I worked really hard. And honestly, very blessed. Like none of this was my doing to get the opportunities. Every single door I've walked through, I had to walk through it. And I had to do hard work to get there. But like, there's no reason I should have met my wife who had an entrepreneurial family, like, and then move out there just taking a risk to do a network marketing thing. And then a door opens where a guy's retiring and I say yes, and we partner. And then I buy my father-in-law out. Was able to navigate a situation that worked out well. But then I bought another business where it only came about because he was a Mennonite, and I was like, oh, I know I'm a Christian. I know I know what they believe.
Yeah.
I can sell them on, we could work together. And like, they're all just opportunities that should not have happened. And yes, I'm not like it's all luck. I had to work my butt off to do it. But I'm very blessed that I wasn't born in somewhere else to a different set of family and to a different set of opportunities. So there's a lot of that, I don't know what you call it, not luck, but blessing in that, where I put in the hard work and suffered, but also doors opened, had the right situations happen. And I'm a very big proponent of, if doors open, push through them and see if something's there. And if it closes, it closes, but just keep pushing. And if you see something that looks like it might be a door, run into it.
There you go. Sometimes you got to make your own doors.
See if it's there. And then if it doesn't work out, then fine. But always be looking for something that you can push through and find opportunities.
Yeah. Luck is where opportunity meets preparation.
Yep.
And I had a conversation with one of my agents today. He was like, hey, he was talking to somebody else. He was like, hey, I hope you get lucky, and said some stuff. And I just put in text, luck is where opportunity meets preparation.
Yep.
You're going to get lucky with that 1,000-man account because you were there at the networking meeting. You're not going to get that by sitting, eating potato chips on your couch. Like,
I can't remember the other one. It's like, I think it's I find the harder, or who was it that said it, but they said, the harder I work, it seems like the luckier I get.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same thing.
Concept.
Like, you're consistent, the opportunities will show up.
Yeah.
But you got to execute on them. You can't just watch them go past. You got to try and see if you can have that opportunity come.
And you're going to fail in anything you do. And this is where I'm learning too, is like, failure is where, if you admit and accept the fact that you're going to fail, you need to be ready for when you fail so you can get the most lessons out of that failure.
Yes.
And so versus being shocked when you fail and you're not ready to learn from that. I think having the mindset of being ready to fail, like, I'm going to fail in my life. And when those failures come, I'm not going to be shocked. I'm not going to be depressed. I'm not going to be filled with stress.
Yep.
I'm going to be excited that they're there, because failures are now an opportunity for me to learn and never do it again.
Yep. Yeah, there's two I can think of that I had failures. One is with my original business. We said we're going to start a fireproofing division. And I should have done more research. But we bought, I think, $40,000 worth of equipment and thought, okay, we're going to do this thing. We're going to go for it. And we got a job that basically paid for all the equipment and made like maybe a little tiny bit of money. And then we were like, this is not going to be a big business for us. We are not going to be doing this, because every single job you do, it's like, oh, you need another piece of equipment and you need another new capital expenditure. And now you're a fireproofing company and you need somebody in the office. Like, the capital investment needed to grow that business is not what I want to go down the road of. I could have found that out beforehand by doing more research, but I was like, the entrepreneurial, let's take the risk. And fortunately, we can still utilize that stuff and do small jobs and do some things that worked out. But I thought we were going to do something very different. And we've just basically walked back and said, we're only going to do only this with it. And it works, but it's not like a huge thing we thought it was going to be. Another example of failure was I loaned money to a business that I was partners with. And that created a problem because I'm an owner and I'm a lender to the business. And when I talked to the partner, I think that conflated things, because it's like, are you thinking as a partner or as a lender right now when you're talking to me?
Yeah.
And I will never do that again, ever. But I would say one thing that's really important with failure is only good if you evaluate the failure. Like, so many people will be like, failure is good and you'll learn. But a lot of people will not actually sit down and go, why did this fail? And then what do I learn from it? My dad was the one who gave me the quote. He said, basically, experience isn't good. Evaluated experience is the thing that's right. And he told me on the phone, he was like, I'm not just talking about think about what you learned, write it down and like start to build a log of things you've learned along the way. And one of those things would be, don't loan money to a business that you're a partner with, because it complicates the relationship. I would never do that again in the format I did.
Yeah.
I would still potentially loan somebody some money if I needed to for a certain thing. And actually, that's another business that I've got in Maryland that I'm loaning money to a guy who started up a trash business in the hopes that might open the door to potentially buying into it. So that's another door that I saw randomly through a connection. This guy called me, met him a few times, and I said, I'm not going to invest right now, but if you want a bridge loan, I'll lend you a little bit of money for this thing so you can do what you need to do for working capital. And then if down the road that's open there, but
that's cool. Yeah, it's kind of like the whole fail forward. You can only fail forward if you actually take a moment to really dissect why you failed and what really actually happened. I'm going through the book right now that is talking about self-deception.
Oh, Leadership in the Art of Self-Deception?
Yes.
David is a great salesman, isn't he? Yeah. Did he give you that?
Yeah, he did.
Dude, he is like the ultimate salesman.
He is, yeah, and he's a pastor.
Hype man. The ultimate hype man.
He is. Because I was canceling my Audible subscription. Yeah. Because I had a bunch of unused credits, and I'm like, I don't need to. I can just cancel it, get through the books that I have, and then I'll read. Whatever. And so I just texted David. I'm like, hey, send me some books. He's like, this one. And I'm like, all right, done. Yeah. So I'm on chapter like 4 right now.
Yeah. He sent it to me as well.
That's good.
Yeah. Good. It's funny.
It's interesting. It's a cool book because it's like a story. Yeah. It's a story, but also has a bunch of like really good lessons in there.
Yeah. I like those narrative type books where they have those.
Yeah. But anyway, okay. So let's wrap up here. A couple final thoughts, I guess, for this. Your story is crazy. I think the takeaways I have is you are a creative person and you look at a problem or you look at an opportunity that I think other people would just assume that they can't have or they can't do. And you're like, I am going to figure out a way that makes sense for me. And I'm going to be as creative as possible to make both parties as happy as possible. Right. And I think that is a skill that most people don't have, but it's something that can be taught.
Yeah, honestly, they can learn it. Like, I didn't have it. And I don't know anybody I didn't ever learn that from anybody. Mm-hmm. I just went, can we make something happen? And I made it up. Mm-hmm. Like, when I bought my father-in-law, sitting at a table with me, him, and somebody else. And I just said, I have an idea for how we could, because we were having a hard time figuring out what's it worth and how do I actually buy them out. I said, here's what I propose. And it was a deal that I guarantee you, nobody has ever done a deal the way it was done. And it was weird, and I can't go into details. But basically, he went, oh, I think that could work for me. And we were like, okay, cool. So we drew it up and it worked. But it was just, it's the only way I could pull it off. Yeah. I didn't have money. Yeah. I didn't have any money. I had basically savings for our personal stuff, but I was like, I can't give that up. Mm-hmm. I have to be safe and the business is worth this, but I can make it worth more. So I just said, hey, bet on me that I'm going to make it bigger. Mm. And then you're going to get something in the future by this, this, and this. And so, yeah, it's just, I think, don't limit yourself in what you can think. Like, there's no rules to the game we're playing. Yeah. It can't be illegal, but there are no rules to how you can make something happen. And every deal I've done on paper initially would have been, I can't do this. And only through like, how can I do it? Was I able to get them done? Man. But I wouldn't have done them if I just looked at them and said, can I afford that? The answer would have been no, I can't afford that.
Yeah. I mean, if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, guys, be creative, figure out a way. There is a way to make it happen. It's out there. Yeah. And it might not be on YouTube. It might not be on a blog post somewhere. Sometimes just thinking, being logical, like, hey, how can we make this work? Getting back to good old fashioned, using your intuition and using your brain and just making things happen. Yeah. And I think that is a good lesson, honestly, for everyone. And dude, anything that you would like to plug, say, mention, to kind of end us off? Yeah. If you are looking to potentially sell your business, you can go to doranholdings.com and look. We're not buying at a rapid scale or anything. I'm being very selective at what we would buy. But we're going to be offering some courses for business owners on what accounting they actually need to know versus accounting in general. And then we're going to be offering some other things like that for free, just resources that should be coming out shortly. And then I would just plug you, if you're interested in it, don't hesitate to reach out to another business owner and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. Ask questions. I have a couple guys that text me about thinking about buying businesses all the time.
And it's a refreshing thing for me, as long as you're asking questions that are not Googleable.
Yes.
So, but I just reach out. If you guys did want to reach out to me or Dillon, just networking is a huge piece of getting successful, because you're going to learn as much as you can do. So reach out to me, reach out to Dillon, reach out to anybody and ask them questions about whatever you're trying to figure out.
I love it. So if you're interested in learning more, Doran Holdings website, Daniel's website will be in the description as well as the comment section. So you can check that out there. It's a cool little website. I visited it earlier. I think you have a contact form on there as well.
I do a contact form for like a newsletter.
Perfect. So you can do that. And if you want to just learn more, definitely comment on the video. This is great, man. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for coming on the show. It was awesome.
Yeah, cool.
And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Thanks. Let's go, dude. Nice.
Yeah, cool.